Greetings, everybody. I hope that you all are doing very well on this fine Saturday night. I am revisiting Sebastian Rogers, but for a couple of different reasons. I'm not going to really go into them because it's a lot of wasted time just chittering and chattering. And I really kind of just want to get into the bulk of the conversation. So I hope you guys are getting all prepared for Thanksgiving and looking forward to a nice, big, yummy meal. All right. So let me get our, nope, that's not it. There we go. So I'm going to start out by kind of giving you a little insight what caused me to decide to revisit this situation. And so this is actually a video that aired on Seth Rogers' channel. And that link will be in the description of this video so that you can go and watch the entire discussion. It is absolutely fascinating and interesting. But the part, so let me let this play.
So Josh, let me hit you with a question. Your good buddy Chris, what does he think's going on?
Talking about Chris McDonough, not Christopher Proudfoot, but Chris McDonough.
On here?
Well, I've talked to Chris about this case many times. I stay in touch with him about it constantly. And
what you're allowed to share?
He hasn't left the house. He thinks that the answers are there. He thinks that that's where the investigation should.
Well, maybe if Sumner County had ever done forensics in the house, we'd have something to take on, to go.
Yeah,
I agree. Now, Chris McDonough is obviously a law enforcement professional. He knows what he's talking about in terms of investigation and evidence. My perspective, my point of view is the psychological aspect, the experience or the experiences of these parents as they are dealing with this missing kid, a special needs child. I don't see any reason to believe that Sebastian Rogers ever left the house. Not through Katie's words, not through Christopher Proudfoot's words. They're not demonstrating that frame of mind. Where is my child? I have to protect my kid. As a parent, you guys know the one overriding drive that a parent experiences is the protection of their child. And it really, you'll find out as you age and get older, it doesn't matter if your child is 5 years old or if your child is 15 or if your child is 35. As a parent, this internal drive to protect your kid, to know where they are, to know that they're safe or offer assistance if they're, in trouble. This is something in our DNA. This is an animalistic drive. And here we are 9 months later, nearly 10 months. We're going on 10 months now. You just say, I don't know why he walked out the door, and then you can't go any further than that. Something is wrong with that. It just simply doesn't make sense. So for my thoughts, my feelings, my opinion, I just can't see where they are disturbed and wondering, is he walking down the road? Is he with someone? You just don't get that from them. And Chris McDonough's point of view is, the evidence itself is just simply not getting us where we need to be. So, let me go back here.
It's a great thing. You know, there's a lot of people, a lot of support possible to see, you know.
I want to get to
That everything will be positive tonight, but
And may justice prevail. Amen.
Amen.
I didn't think it was going to be my last normal night.
so
okay. So I'm going to back out of this video for the time being. And I'm going to go to there was debate. Yeah. There was debate on whether this was the first interview related to Sebastian Rogers, but ultimately it was decided that this was not the first interview, that this was the second interview. The first interview was done by a local television station, was pretty controlled and limited in terms of actually getting the words of Katie Proudfoot. And so then we have Duchess, who has a cousin or something that is also cousins with Katie, and kind of put them together to ultimately do this interview. And this is very old. This is an 8-9-month-old interview. We've all seen it. You've seen it. I've seen it. So I wanted to go back and sort of listen to it expressly for what happened the day that Sebastian went missing. Let me make sure you guys can see it. Yes, you can. All right, here we go.
Went missing. I know that his mom said that he was having a good day. He had a great weekend. So do you want to walk us through what that looks like again for everybody?
He did have a really good weekend, actually. When we come home from having supper that evening, he was playing. When he went to bed, when I told him to go to bed, he said, "I love you, Mama," and he said, "I love you, puppies." A little later in the evening, I myself went to bed, and when I went to wake him up for school, he wasn't here.
And you did tell me that Sebastian is not a runner.
He's not.
It's okay. Take your time.
Sebastian does not have a history of running. I mean, the young man doesn't go outside very much. I mean, everybody in the neighborhood knows him. He is very to himself, so to speak. Between the hours of 12 and 6, he has basically vanished. Walked out of the house, the door was locked, and gone.
Okay, this is so interesting to me, right? That Christopher Proudfoot, who was not supposedly, reportedly, was not there, that he proclaims that Sebastian went missing between 12 midnight and 6 a.m., that he walked out the door, locked the door, and then wandered off. Now, I don't know about you, but every time I listen to this, I think about Barry Morphew. And you guys know, Barry Morphew needs, in my opinion, this is one of the biggest miscarriages of justice, was the fact that Barry Morphew walked free. It's just incredible. But if you remember the interview that Tyler Draper, what was his name? Draper? if you remember Tyson Draper, the interview that he did where he just caught up with Barry walking down the road, and Barry says, "Come on, I'll tell you what happened." If you remember that, put a 1, because there's a really, really important parallel here to that moment with Tyson and Barry Morphew to this description that we just got from Christopher Proudfoot, that they were walking on this dirt road, and Barry Morphew says, "Come on," talking about walk with me down to the hill where we found the bicycle. "Come on, let me tell you what happened." Who remembers that? Only a couple of people? That's crazy. I guess I'm the only one obsessed with Morphew going to jail. But anyway, so once he gets Tyson over to where the hill is, where the bicycle's found, he proceeds to tell Tyson what happened to Suzanne. Oh, well, maybe the cat got her. And so, she's coming down the hill and the cat jumps and gets her. And we're looking in this triangle of land, and animals, when they have their prey, they go uphill, which is not true, Barry Morphew. That is not true. Frankly, I'm surprised you don't know any better. So in the same way that we have Barry Morphew telling us what happened to Suzanne Morphew when he's actually in Denver, Colorado. He's 4.5 hours away from home. He's nowhere around Suzanne Morphew when she goes missing. So how does he know to tell Tyson what happened? Same way as Christopher
And you
Proudfoot.
did tell me that Sebastian is not a runner.
He's not.
It's okay. Take your time.
Christopher's going to tell
Sebastian
us.
does not have a history of running. I mean, the young man doesn't go outside very much. I mean, everybody in the neighborhood knows him. He is very to himself, so to speak. Between the hours of 12 and 6, he has basically vanished. Walked out of the house, the door was locked and gone.
He did.
Isn't that crazy? Both cases, Barry Morphew and the disappearance of Sebastian Rogers, you've got someone telling you that was hours away from the location of the missing person. But they proceed to talk with such confidence about what happened. They're instructing us. They're being the teacher, right? Now, why would they do that? Because they are guiding the narrative. They are taking your thoughts and your beliefs about what has happened, and they're manipulating you to believe that you already have the facts. So they're constructing this idea. Sebastian just walked out the door. And Sebastian was so conscientious about walking out the door that he turned around, took time to lock it, I guess to keep mom and the puppies safe, as he left in the middle of the night to wander down the dark road, right? So we're being manipulated. We're having those the facts of a story fed to us so that it changes how we think, right? Wouldn't you think Sumner County would know this tool, this psychological tactic? Wouldn't you think that if you were a professional police officer, a detective who does interviews, wouldn't you think that it's highly, 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 highly questionable when a person who's not even in the same town, who's literally 2, 3, 4 hours away, when they start instructing you to tell you what happened? But how could they possibly know? And it's true. Tyson Draper has paid a high price for that interview that he had with Barry Morphew, but Barry Morphew grabbed onto Tyson. Tyson was not running down the road chasing him, saying, hey, 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 let me have an interview. Barry Morphew says those fateful words, come on, I'll tell you what happened. Oh, okay, Barry. The problem is you were in a hotel room in Colorado, in Denver. So how do you know what the hell happened? Yeah. And then he even suggests to the police officers, oh, you saw bobcat tracks. You saw mountain lion tracks. Mountain lion walking up and down beside the police cars. Come on, stop. It's just stupid. And now we have the same phenomenon happening in the first free form interview, long interview. Christopher Proudfoot does exactly the same thing as Barry Morphew. Let me tell you what happened. But the mom is sitting right there, Christopher Proudfoot. The mother is sitting right there. Wouldn't it actually make more sense for her to tell us, since she was the one that was actually there? You were in Memphis. So this is the first thing that is so interesting to me, is why is he telling us what happened? How the hell does he know? And there is one other thing that is said that I think is shocking. And that is the mother, Katie Proudfoot, says to us, Sebastian is not a runner. In fact, she says exactly the same thing in the first interview that was the news station that was quite limited. And that was one of the clips that made it in. Sebastian is not a runner. She also said it in a couple of other interviews. Sebastian is not a runner. Christopher Proudfoot in this interview tells us he never goes outside. He stays inside. Sebastian stays inside all the time. And then they say what? He ran. He left the house. He walked out, not in the bright sunshine. They're now wanting us to believe that this non-running child just decided to leave in the middle of the night with nothing happening, that it's the happiest, greatest day of his life. And out of the blue, he just up and walks out. And right before he steps off into the darkest of dark nights, he turns around, takes time to lock the door. Who buys that story? Why do they keep saying to us, he is not a runner, he is not a runner, he never goes outside, only to explain he ran sometime between the hours of 12 midnight and 6 a.m. He walked out the front door, turned to lock the door, and then disappeared into the night, 15 years old with autism. Now, those of us that understand autism, those of us that know kids, teachers and such, we're listening to this and we're saying this is simply not a story that makes any sense at all. I'll tell you what else does not make sense. Do you know that they brought out the what are they called? The thermo something cameras where they shine it down and they can see like where the heat traces are of the animals, the human bodies. Okay. So you suggest that he walks out the door. I guess he's just going to go for a stroll, maybe, because he was so happy all day. I'm sure he had no reason to leave the home. Christopher Proudfoot, with all his anger, was nowhere to be found. Yes, Cinnamon, poof, into thin air is what we were told. Oh, he probably got lost. He probably wandered into the woods and got lost, but they would have seen him using those thermo cameras. Right? So you can't say Sebastian is not a runner and Sebastian ran. You can't get away with that when you're talking to cops, police officers that simply want to find the kid, because they stop and ask the question that I just asked. Oh, excuse me, I'm so sorry. Mr. Proudfoot, did you say that this boy does not run? He does not leave the home. In fact, you've said on multiple occasions, he doesn't even go outside. You've said those words, and yet your wife is saying that in the middle of the night with no lights on, he went outside and poof, disappeared into the middle of the darkness. If Sumner County were really, really curious about what might have happened to this 15-year-old boy, don't you think they would have been curious about that double speak? So not only did they use the thermal cameras to look for Sebastian or traces of Sebastian, in a very peculiar way, Seth Rogers was told to stay at his house the first night that Sebastian is gone. He ran across them at the Proudfoot home, and then they wanted to go to Seth's house to get the equipment, computers, phones, and such. And he was instructed not to go back to the Proudfoot home, to stay there. Sumner County police officers told him, stay there. Do not go back over there with Chris and Katie tonight. Is that odd? I think that is incredibly strange. The other thing I think is incredibly strange, Sumner County, why is it exactly that you would take the telephone, even a computer that was like 4, 5 years old that nobody had been on? Why would you go to Seth's house and take his switch? Why would you go and take all of the electronics out of Seth's house, but you did not do the same at the Proudfoot home? What exactly was driving the Sumner County investigation? Because they did not use luminol. They did not preserve any evidence whatsoever from the Proudfoot home. Now, Seth was on camera at work all night long. And he didn't get to his truck until 7:30 in the morning when he got off work. He didn't get to his church till 7:30 in the morning, which is where he saw the text from Christopher Proudfoot that said 911. But the problem is that Christopher Proudfoot tells us that by 6 a.m., they know that Sebastian was gone because that's when Katie went in to wake him up and he wasn't there. So you're telling me that Katie Proudfoot at 6 a.m. realizes her child is gone. She goes around the house looking for him. She then panics and goes outside screaming for him. Then she gets in her car and she goes up to the school driving around looking for him. And Christopher Proudfoot does a 3-way phone call to Sumner County Police, the back number. So there is no recording. And they do not call Seth for an hour and a half. 90 minutes of not knowing where this special needs boy is. It didn't occur to you, hey, maybe Sebastian went to his dad's house. That is very strange. 90 minutes? And Sumner County Police Department did not think that was unusual? In fact, remember what I said. They treated this case with Sebastian as a runaway when they were at the Proudfoot house. At the Proudfoot house, everything was left pristine. Nothing was disrupted. They didn't check under the bed. They said, Mom says it's a runaway. We ain't doing nothing about nothing because this kid is a runaway. Even though she says he's not a runner, we're going to let Katie Proudfoot determine him to be a runaway. And the cops don't think anything of it, but then they immediately turn around and drive to Seth Rogers' house, where, interestingly enough, Sebastian is not treated as a runaway. In fact, they turn Seth's house upside down. He's got a very small house, and they spend an hour and a half at Seth's house, basically ripping Sebastian's room to shreds. I mean, taking the mattress off the box spring, picking the box spring up, taking everything out of the drawers. It's madness. It's madness. There is no logic at all. And Sumner County continues to sit there like royalty, like they are untouchable, like they do not care if anyone looks at the facts of this entire opera. And everybody's going, anybody who's being honest, let me put it that way, anyone who's being logical and honest, they can't look at this and say, okay, well, what was going on with the investigators for Sumner County that day? What happened? Why is it that Sebastian is a runaway? He's not a runner. He's a runaway because Katie Proudfoot said so. And they do no investigation at all at the Proudfoot home. And then they make the drive over to Seth's house, where they spend 90 minutes tearing up the rooms, the drawers, going through everything with a fine-tooth comb for like a little 800 square foot apartment. What's the difference? Has Sumner County offered anyone an explanation as to whether they believe the second day after he's missing, did Sumner County believe that Sebastian was a runaway, as was treated at the Proudfoot home, or was there a crime which is the way they acted when they were at Seth's house. Isn't that just remarkable? It is truly mind-boggling to stop and think about it. Because I knew, I said when this case was all unfolding, I said there needed to be some new laws enacted, that especially in the case of special needs people, that if they believe that there is a runaway, that evidence, the scene, the environment should be treated as a crime scene in terms of collecting evidence, just to be on the safe side, especially when it's a special needs teen, right? At least preserve your evidence until there's some kind of indication about where this special needs teenager or child may have gone to. And they didn't do that. They did nothing. They didn't use luminol. They did not, I think this is really important, they did not inspect Christopher Proudfoot and Katie Proudfoot's arms and hands, the trunk of their body, their neck, their face. They didn't make any observation looking for defensive wounds. Why wouldn't you do that? You've got a missing teenager where there have been many CPS calls, where teachers at school had made calls to CPS. Why wouldn't you give a damn at the Proudfoot home? And then you drive over to Seth's house and tear it apart with a fine-tooth comb. Who would do? Why did they do that? And I think that an attorney should bring suit against Sumner County and have them answer that question. For the first 48 hours or 36 hours, or better yet, 96 hours, with the case of Sebastian Rogers, was it being treated as a runaway, like you did at the Proudfoots, or did you suspect a crime like you did when you went to Seth's house? I would pin them down on that. That is remarkably suspicious on the part of the investigators. It's insanity, really. All right.
Didn't take a phone. None of his shoes are missing.
Now, you told me that night now, Chris, you were at work. You were out of town at work,
Yes,
so
ma'am.
you were not even home.
Correct, ma'am.
And Mom, you fell asleep on the couch about 10 o'clock, but you said that Sebastian went to bed at 9 p.m. And then you got up off the couch and you went to bed, and you said that was around midnight.
Midnight.
And nothing was unusual at that point. Everything seemed okay.
There's actually a piece of, so to make something very crystal clear, so that way there's transparency across the board. Me and the mom were on the phone at 9:43 or 9:46 in the evening. We stayed on the phone for quite some time.
I got a real problem with this, Christopher Proudfoot. 9:46 or 9:47, really? You sure you want to go down that route? Because if a person who has an inclination to be exact down to individual minutes cannot later on gloss over other things like, where the hell did you disappear to when you went to go get your camper? Oh, well, I had things to do.
Call logs have been verified by all the police departments, TBI included. We stayed on the phone. It was very lengthy. Mom did slightly start falling asleep while she was on the couch. I had said, hey, you need to wake up, put the dogs up, go to bed.
That is so bizarre. That is so crazy. You need to wake up, put the dogs up, and go to bed. Why? Like, who the hell are you? You're hours away at work. Why do you care where your wife sleeps if you're not there?
Now, mind you, that was right around midnight, just before midnight or right around midnight.
But I don't understand that, because didn't he say 9:36, 9:37? Then he said around 10:30.
We stayed on the phone. It was very lengthy. Mom did slightly start falling asleep while she was on the couch. I had said, hey, you need to wake up, put the dogs up, go to bed. Mom apartment on the phone. That way
Okay.
there's transparency across the board.
Point, everything seemed okay.
There's actually a piece of, so to make something very crystal clear, so that way
Okay.
there's transparency across the board. Me and the mom were on the phone at 9:43 or 9:46 in the evening. We stayed on the phone for quite some time. The call logs have been verified by all the police departments, TBI included. We stayed on the phone. It was very lengthy. Mom did slightly start falling asleep while she was on the couch. I had said, hey, you need to wake up, put the dogs up, go to bed. Now, mind you, that was right around midnight, just before midnight or right around midnight.
Mhm.
So then mom does go to bed and wakes up early in the morning to go wake her son up, get him ready for school. And now we have a worried mom who can't find her son in the house. Mom made an effort to look and search several times. Mom has called me at the time and asked me, she was like, I can't find him. I was like, do what? She goes, yeah, I cannot find him. I said, well, hang on. I made the phone call and reported it to the sheriff's department because that's what we're supposed to do. And within 10 minutes, the sheriffs were dispatched to the location.
And you had told me that there hadn't been any particular situation that had occurred where you felt like there would have been something that happened. And I also had asked you if there were any friends that Sebastian might have possibly left the house with, or if he had any contact with anyone on social media. Do you want to comment about that again?
I want to make a comment about the dogs. Thomas Randall says he's not there. The dogs sleep with Katie. They have said that in interviews before. Why put the dogs up? But Thomas Randall, I'm going to challenge you further than that. What does Katie tell us happened when Sebastian goes to bed? That he put the dogs up. Love you, puppies. Going to bed, right? Now, I don't really worry too much about the whole dog comment, whether they were put up or they were not put up, blah, blah, blah. I think I think the fact that they go to such lengths to inform us that Sebastian is not a runner, only to turn around and say Sebastian's a runner, that is directly relevant to this missing boy. And I frankly am in complete disbelief that no one at Sumner County Sheriff's Department, none of them care. Not a single one of them stops and goes, now, wait a minute. This doesn't exactly match what we know, does it? It really, we are really in a terrible situation where it appears Sumner County Sheriff's Department doesn't seem to have much interest in investigating the location of this missing kid. The only time they showed any real interest was when they were saying that Seth was the number one suspect. Oh, really? The number one suspect for what exactly? He was at work all night. He hadn't been with Sebastian. His mother was. so odd. It's so strange.
He doesn't have a social media.
Okay.
And the only friends that he had were a couple of kids in school.
Okay.
All the kids that have had any interaction with him have been interviewed and asked.
Okay.
We as parents know how social media can be,
Right.
and seeing how kids can be easily manipulated.
He's very young in mind.
Yes, he may be.
Right.
He's about 15, and he's 15 in age in his body, but his mind is not caught up to his body. But that is something that goes through with autistic children, as everybody would know.
Right.
But for the record, I am a very strict parent.
Actually, Christopher, you're wrong. Autism doesn't have anything to do with IQ. It doesn't have anything to do with intellectual ability. The bell curve for deviation of IQ scores is exactly the same in the restricted sample of people with autism as compared to the general population. So, yeah, you're wrong about that.
I do. He does not have social media, not in our household. He doesn't online game. I'm pretty strict when it comes to that kind of situation.
Well, that's good. That's good, Chris, that you have control of that, because social media can be very dangerous for young kids, because they don't realize who they may be talking to on social media. So it's always good to have that awareness and to make sure you're monitoring, what your kids are doing. So I had asked you.
Now, once again, we're having a conversation about something where they say he does not have access to the internet, no social media. Maybe he was manipulated by someone on social media. What? And again, Sumner County just seems oblivious to what they're listening to. Okay, well let us sit here and think about this a minute. They've just told us, or let's be specific, Christopher Proudfoot has just told us that Sebastian had no social media, and that at his house or Seth's house, and he had no access to the internet because, after all, I'm Christopher Proudfoot, and I'm a tough, strict parent. He also gives a lot of marital advice, and he's been married 4 times, so go figure that. I've never known of anyone who had CPS charges against 2 different children and 2 different states. My goodness, Christopher Proudfoot, you are working hard to be a notable parent. I wouldn't take any parenting advice or marital advice from Christopher Proudfoot. Now then, they tell us he doesn't go outside. He's not a runner. Right before they tell us he ran away. And they tell us he had no access to social media, no access to the internet, right before they tell us that he's been manipulated by someone from social media on the internet.
Told me, well, that's the $1 million question that everybody wants to know. All the detectives, they've all asked that same question. What is it that happened that caused him to leave the house? And I know you must be so worried and so concerned. Is there anything, if Sebastian were listening to this live stream right now, if you knew that he was out there, what would you want to tell him?
That we love you and to come home.
I mean, it's pretty simple. This boy has a very large family that everybody is asking.
And I don't want to be cold, right? I have empathy, and I can't think of anything more horrifying than not knowing where your kid is. I just think that is the ultimate of a nightmare. but I don't understand this pattern of tears. I'm having a hard time understanding, Touch, come home. But you don't hear any sobs. Your voice having that sound has to come from muscle stress. But where's the stress? Why? I don't hear any weeping. I don't hear that anxious distress. I just hear, just come home. And then it's silent. And I'm not saying she wasn't crying. I'm saying it sounds different than what I would expect. Okay.
The question, where are you? We love you. And please come home.
Yes. We definitely need to find him as soon as possible. If you live in this area, please, because to search a lot of, he may be lost. So that's why they search about that.
Today, the National Guard was also brought in to help with the search, but they have had fixed wing aircraft, helicopters, horseback ATVs, side by side, door to door, scouring every neighborhood possible. I mean, the outreach from the community and various counties has been extremely welcoming, loved. I mean, it's, we've been told this is probably one of the largest searches that they've conducted with so much input that it's a case to be studied for sure.
What? What are you babbling about? It's a case to be studied for sure. Is there anything, Christopher Proudfoot, that you are not an expert in? Like, sincerely, that is a real question that I have. I'm not sure even what this means. Do you guys know? He's talking about how they've had these resources that have been assigned to trying to find this missing kid with special needs. And then he goes into, this is a case to be studied for sure. What do you mean? I don't understand what you're talking about. Are you saying that the police, the searchers are doing bad? That they've made mistakes? Are you saying that they've done an excellent job and great? Like, what does that even mean? Or are you just talking and trying to sound like a big shot? Like, what is it? Now, this interview, I think, and you guys may know better than me and probably ought to ask Brittany. She probably knows exactly. I think this interview must have happened maybe 5 days, 6 days after Sebastian went missing. Does anyone in the chat know exactly how many days? It was 2 days after he went missing that they did the the news station interview that was very, very short. Maybe this one was 5 days and then the other one was 7. But somewhere within 1 week, right? Within 1 week of Sebastian going missing, they're having this conversation. And I stop and I think he made a similar comment about the kid that went missing in was it Memphis or Nashville? Riley, what was his name? Where they found him in the water. He was made to leave the bar because he was super drunk. Was it Riley something? I don't remember. I'm sorry, because if I don't cover the case, I don't pay attention. Riley's, oh well, I don't remember. Y'all know what I'm talking about though. In that particular case, Riley Strain, thank you. My brain tried to get there. Appreciate it, don't dive. Okay, so Riley Strain went missing, and that was actually an enormous effort searching for Riley. And they certainly had much more to investigate. There were actual facts that would inform a search plan, correct? They had videos, they had eyewitnesses that said, yeah, we saw him, we talked to him right here or there. And that was a huge search effort because you have him on all these different videos, security cameras. You have eyewitnesses that say, I talked to him at this street or that street. And yet it's just like poof. And then his shirt showed up on some, one of the homeless guys. And they thought, okay, well, maybe he was hanging out in the homeless encampment and ran into some trouble. And that was truly a monumental, notable search, right? I mean, you had the Cajun Navy come out. There were National Guard. It was a huge thing. They knew he was there. Like they knew he was. It was just a matter of finding him. When Sebastian went missing, though, they were still in the process of looking for Riley, remember? And I'll never forget when Christopher Proudfoot said during an interview, I think it was with Olivia, he says, I cannot imagine what those parents must be going through. Who remembers that? They're doing the interview with Olivia. Something comes up about the Riley Strain case, and Christopher Proudfoot says it's terrible. It's an awful case. I cannot imagine what those parents are going through. Now, y'all, if y'all don't remember that, y'all are going to force me to go get that clip. Okay. All right. Yeah. So Karen remembers it. Thank you, Karen. He did. He absolutely flat out said it. I cannot imagine what those parents are going through as he sits there beside his wife, Katie, whose autistic 15-year-old son has disappeared into thin air. What the hell do you mean, Christopher Proudfoot? You can't imagine what those parents are going through. Aren't you living it? Didn't you tell us that you and Katie, you don't make any distinction between stepkids or biological kids, that they're all just kids? So what exactly did that mean? I can't imagine what those parents are going through. It's very odd. Very, very odd. Okay. Yeah, going through exactly the same thing as he voices those words. And still, Sumner County doesn't find anything strange at all about the Proudfoots. It is really unbelievable.
You have a lot of people that are praying, and city
Is off the table as far as abilities. Could the young man get on a bus? I'm sure he could.
We've never done it before.
We've never rode a city bus, so I don't think he understands the process. He doesn't have any sense of money. He may have, like, let's say, a $20 bill in his hand, but
He doesn't
I understand.
time and money.
And single mom says, does he want his real father? Maybe. I'm just asking. Well, it turns out, single mom, that, he sees his real father every other weekend. And the real father, he is heavily involved in this situation and is aware. And he doesn't know where Sebastian is either, correct?
correct. I mean, I can tell you this.
His father's very much involved in his life.
Yes, very much involved in his life. The relationship between all three of us as parents is not your common one. I mean, me and the father talk on a regular basis. We call each other, we talk. Hey, if we heard anything, how's he doing? Is he acting up? I mean, it's not, there's no really animosity in between the parents.
One of the reasons why I struggle to listen to Christopher Proudfoot talk is because everything is about Christopher Proudfoot. He takes over this whole storyline, this missing kid. It is not about Katie Proudfoot. It is not about Seth Rogers. He makes it about himself every time he opens his mouth. Every time. He's not just your average stepfather. He's a great stepfather. He calls Seth and he talks to him. How's he doing? Is he acting up? Seth, you need me to do anything for you, buddy? And yet, it's 90 minutes before great stepfather of the year contacts the real dad, Seth, to say, your child is missing. So curious. It's so hard to believe that Sumner County has not acted on Christopher Proudfoot. Why haven't they gone into the Proudfoot home and conducted an investigation? That's what I want to know. At what point does Sumner County wake up and say, well, okay, I know the Proudfoots got money, Seth Rogers does not. The Proudfoots have parents who have money, Seth Rogers does not. The Proudfoots have parents who are the pillars of the community, real estate agents and such. Seth Rogers does not. I mean, is that what is guiding us here? Is this just good old-fashioned, disgusting, gross, wealth influence that because Christopher Proudfoot and his parents have friends with the judge and attorneys and they've got the big shiny house and the cars, that somehow sends a message that no way did anything bad happen to this boy in that pretty house. Bad things like that don't happen in those pretty houses. I don't know. Call me crazy, but Barry Morphew had a really pretty house. And Suzanne ended up an hour south, filled up with chemicals that Barry Morphew used against deer. It's a pretty house. It's a lot of money. And Suzanne Morphew is dead. What about Christopher Watts? That was a really pretty house, wasn't it? Whew, that was such a pretty house in a fine location, a great housing market. I don't know, bad things happened in that pretty house. Really bad things. A pregnant lady and her 2 young babies dead on a doornail by Christopher in the pretty house. So Sumner County, I don't give a shit how pretty the Proudfoot house is or how small and inconsequential Seth Rogers' house is. I don't care. Either Sebastian Rogers is a case that is a runaway, and therefore both parents should be treated equally, both houses should be treated equally, or there is a suspected crime and both sets of parents should be investigated properly. Both potential crime scenes should be processed properly. Sumner County Sheriff's Department, you guys don't get to just sit around and decide we don't want to disturb the wealthy Proudfoots and go in there looking for blood and unfortunate facts like that, even though that is in fact the last place that we know Sebastian to be. And his mom admitted she's the last person to ever see the kid alive. We're going to treat him like a runaway at the big pretty house because we may need some donations from the Proudfoot family, you know. You do know that the sheriff, that's a political position. That means he has to do political campaigning, and that takes money. Doesn't it, Mr. and Miss Proudfoot? But when we go over to Seth Rogers' house, Sebastian is not a runaway. We're going to process Seth Rogers' home as if a crime were committed against that young man. It is nauseating what they have done to Seth Rogers, and the fact that they have so badly dropped the ball in this investigation with Sebastian Rogers.
Proudfoot saying, and 911, and that's when I turned around and I called, and that's when I found out my son was missing.
7:30 a.m.
So what was that conversation like when you finally got him on the phone? And do you happen to remember what time the text was versus the missed call? I mean, was that right at 6 o'clock? Was it at 7 something?
6:22.
Okay, so they went through the business of Katie calls Chris calls the sheriff, and then when all those calls were made, then they reach out to you for the first time.
The text was at 6:22. From my understanding, they called the sheriff's office at like 6:33. So,
Seth, what was the first thing that Chris said to you on the phone? What was the very first thing he said?
don't be mad.
And at any point, did he ask you if you had seen Sebastian or heard from Sebastian?
No. I want to do this timeline again because this is unbelievable. So Christopher Proudfoot tells us somewhere 9:43, 9:46, he starts a conversation the night before with Katie on the telephone. And then around midnight, he said, it's time for you. You're falling asleep. He wasn't there, but here's what he says. You're falling asleep. It is time for you to get up, put the dogs up, and go to bed. Do any of you have husbands that talk to you that way? I don't. I would think my husband had lost his damn mind if he called me, if he's off working and he calls me in the middle of the night and says, where are you? And I say, I'm sleeping. Where are you sleeping? On the sofa. I was studying. Okay, well, it is after midnight. You better get up, put the dogs up, and then go to bed. It's time for you to go to bed. I would think he had gone crazy. And yet, this seems to work for Katie. No, this is normal for them. So Christopher Proudfoot proclaims, just like Barry Morphew, come on, I'll tell you what happened. He says that between 12 and 6 a.m., Sebastian walked out the front door. He's that specific. Walks out the front door, locks the door, and then walks out. He runs away, although he's not a runner. And then she gets up at 6 a.m. She goes and to wake up her son. He's not there. Late in other interviews, she talks about yelling for him, checking the kitchen. Is he cooking? Where is he? Then at some point, she gets in her car. She goes outside. She screams. Then she gets in her car and she drives up to the school. and she's on the phone, and Christopher tells her, okay, I've called the cops. Now you got to go back to the house. They're already on their way. This is so stupid. Sumner County investigators, this is so stupid that you accept this timeline. It is incredible. They do the three-way call, even though, according to Katie, he's already said they're already on their way. What? She wasn't on the phone with you, Christopher Proudfoot? You claimed she was. So Katie says, I ran back home. Then she stops herself. No, I didn't run. I drove. So she trips up there too. She gets back to the house. And then at 6:22, they call Seth and leave a message, 911. That's it, 911, 6:22. And 11 minutes later, then they called the Sumner County Sheriff's Department again? Which is it? Did we call the Sheriff's Department while we're driving around the school? Or did we call once we're on our way back because the cops are coming? Your timeline is bullshit. It's not right. It doesn't work at all. And if we only look at Seth Rogers, they give him this text message, 911, at 6:22, and then they wait for an hour. They just sit there and we sent him a 911. He didn't get back with us. He'll get back with us when he gets off work. Really? This child is missing. You are, what'd you say? You call 911 because that's what you're supposed to do? Exact quote. But you didn't call 911. You called a back channel phone number that would not be recorded. That's what you said. But then you don't call 911. You call a direct phone number that is to a back office. But then when you text Seth, you use 911 when you text Seth? They were all over the place on this story. But Sumner County Sheriff's Department sees nothing wrong. Nothing wrong. In fact, they do no investigation, no preservation of evidence whatsoever for the Proudfoot home. But then they drive an hour to Seth's house and tear it upside down. Why? Why? Either it's a crime or it's a runaway. So what's the explanation here? Oh, Christopher Proudfoot's your friend? Got that right.
He never asked me that sort of stuff. They knew I was at work, and they didn't bother to call my work. I was pretty much an
You say they knew you were at work. Is that what you just said?
Yeah, they knew I was at work.
And I'm assuming that Josh or I or anybody else that really wanted to get an urgent message to you could call Sumner County Sheriff's Office and say, we have.
Got me.
Okay.
They live in Sumner. I work in Davidson County.
Yeah, I mean, they could have called and said in Davidson County and said, hey, we got an urgent message for Mr. Rogers, right?
Yeah.
Had you ever gotten messages like that before, or ever gotten somebody called up there trying to get a hold of you, or no?
No, I haven't. There's never been any emergencies or anything. I've gone as far as on my refrigerator, and I had given Katie a copy of it, but I have a whole list of the number to call and then the extensions for every pod, including at that point in time would have been my lieutenant's office as well. I mean,
Now, here's why this is such critical information. Seth is telling you that he went to great lengths to to make sure that Katie or Sebastian would be able to get in like make contact with him, even if he was at work. Gave him like multiple phone numbers, multiple extensions, right? Said it was on the refrigerator. I'm having a hard time with this. If your child is missing and you're freaked out enough that you call the sheriff's department, they respond within 10 minutes. They're crawling through the neighborhood. You got straight wing aircraft. I mean, all that crap that Christopher Proudfoot spouted. What's the one question that would be hanging over your head during this time? They would be out in the woods and they would be searching and looking. They had dogs out there and all that. But what's the one question playing over in your mind, realistically? Did he go to his dad's house, right? Did he reach out to Seth? Has he called Seth? Is he with Seth? Where are they? In what world does your child go missing and you send one text message that simply says 911 and nothing else? Who does that? Who does that? And yet we are told that they wait for an hour with no follow-ups, with no, we got phone numbers on the fridge. Go get them. We'll call. We'll be able to find him. How about this? How about just saying to Sumner County, the investigator that shows up, hey, will you call Davidson County Sheriff's Department and get them to contact the father, Seth Rogers? That is all that would have to be done. And Seth would have been on his way. But instead of following up to find out if your missing kid has reached out to his dad, possibly even sleeping at dad's house, and that all is well, you bring out the entire sheriff's department to start searching? So what? I'm back on Sumner County again. You think Sumner County didn't ask? Tell us about the father. Is he close to his son? Would your son contact his father if he was lost or having trouble? And what would the answer be? Yes, he would. Yes, they're close. Yes, he's a great dad. Yes, he does regular visitation. Yes, he's going to live with him after school finishes. And in the sheriff's department, someone in a sheriff's car would have driven to the jail. Seth, sorry to bother you, buddy. We got to ask you some questions. You send one text message that says 911 and no follow-up at all. You do not ask the Sumner County Sheriff's Department to intervene and get a message to Seth. You do nothing except just sit there and wait for somebody to respond to this goofy code. Who thinks this is real? Is that logical at all? No Amber Alerts for Sebastian. In order for there to be an Amber Alert, there has to be a suspected car. Like you have to have more information. So the story is just, it's just not real. This isn't real. And we've known this about Christopher Proudfoot and Katie. We know these things. But no one has really stopped to say, okay, well, what was Sumner County thinking? What were the investigators thinking? What were police officers thinking? Because their behavior in the immediate early days, their behavior is just as illogical and irrational as Katie and Christopher Proudfoot.
Every extension to get into dispatch, to get into the lieutenant, been able to.
For that, you gave it to her.
Yeah. Chris said afterwards that they didn't have it. So.
Okay, so you get the call. He says, "Don't be mad."
First words, y'all know this already. First words, Christopher Proudfoot says, not Katie. Why in the hell is Christopher having to talk to everybody? Why doesn't Katie talk? But Christopher Proudfoot's first words to Seth, don't be mad. Excuse me? There is a special needs kid who is not a runner wandering around in the dead of night. And the first thing, the thing that you're most concerned with is that Seth is going to be mad? I think the appropriate thing to say would be, Seth, just prepare yourself. We've got a problem. We've already called the cops. They're looking for Sebastian. Is he with you? Did he contact? Don't be mad. So crazy. This is a crazy story.
What was your response to that?
You don't be mad, but Sebastian's missing and the cops are at our house. Like,
is that one of those things when you hear that Sebastian's missing, you go, well, he's got to be around there somewhere. They're going to find him, in 20-30 minutes or something. Was that the feeling, or was it was it more grim than that?
And remember, at the time that Sebastian went missing, Seth Rogers was kept out of the loop with the CPS reports. Remember that. They were having a lot of contact with CPS. Both Katie and Christopher Proudfoot had CPS problems, but perhaps they lied to CPS and said, no, the father's not in the picture. I don't know how it could have been. And to be fair, I don't think Seth knows. He seemed to be really surprised why he was not notified that these terrible reports had been filed regarding his son. There were not only reports regarding Sebastian, but I think there was some domestic violence between Katie and Christopher. But because once it all came out and he had to get an attorney, he had to fight the system to finally get the reports that he was entitled to having custody of his child. But then once he was able to get that, then he said, I know more now about the environment my son was living in. And he felt like, kind of opened his eyes a little bit for some of the things that Sebastian was having to manage. But at the time that he's told Sebastian's missing, he does not know about the CPS problems. He does not know about the violence in the home or the reports of violence in the home. So you got to keep that in mind.
Him telling me that my son was missing, my son has never been an eloper. He's never been one to go missing. Never have I ever had the phone call ever that my son was missing.
So was it, I think what Josh was asking is, was it, like, we'll figure out where he's at, or was it that pit in your stomach that every parent has had when their child's missing for 5 or 10 minutes and they can't find him?
I've always known where Sebastian is. I've always known who he's with or where he's at. I mean, 7 o'clock rolls around. I know that he's getting on the bus or getting ready to. The school's picking him up. He's going to be at school. If it's on the weekends, I know he's with his mom. And it's never been one of those things on I'm not knowing where he's at.
Right.
So me getting this call, and it was just like, I got to get over there. That was my only thought process was to get to their house.
So how long was that conversation between you and Chris?
Probably
Between
less than
between
50 seconds.
and then you said I'm on my way.
Yeah, I was already in my truck. Started it as soon as I heard that shit. I was backing out of the thing and heading towards the entrance for the garage so I can get out.
I just can't imagine the nightmare. I can't.
So what does that look like then? You leave Davidson County, and where do you go then, and what do you do?
It took me like an hour to get there.
Straight there.
Straight there. I mean, it was just pedal to the metal and go. Morning traffic going straight over there. You know, I didn't get pulled over. I didn't see any cops or anything, and I didn't give a shit.
Were you continuously checking your phone just in case something?
No, I have a Bluetooth set up in my truck, so if it rang, it would automatically answer. If I get a text message, it notifies me, and I'll read the text message out loud.
And no phone call on the way there.
No.
God.
They didn't.
It's incredible.
So the one thing I'm not hearing through this is obviously you didn't have Sebastian with Chris, you had him with Katie. So there was no conversation with Katie before you got to the house.
Exactly.
None at all.
Mathis.
Okay, so go ahead.
So I get there. When I pull in, I literally go all the way up and turn around and come back because there was no parking in front of that house. There were police cruisers, SUVs. There was the truck that had the drones. They already had drones out flying, looking, and there was the vehicle with the dogs. They were already there when I got there.
So according to the great and powerful Christopher Proudfoot, Sebastian goes missing between midnight and 6 a.m. There's a text that's sent at 6:22. All it says is 911, nothing else. There's no further attempts to reach Seth until he gets in his car at 7:30 in the morning and gets this text message. He proceeds to call. The phone call is seconds only. He's now on for an hour drive to be there. So they've been there from 6:30 to 7:30 to 8:30, about 2 hours, and the police have already brought in the dogs and the drones. 2 hours. They bring the dogs and the drone, but no one thought to drive to the jail in Davidson County and ask the dad, do you have Sebastian? I'm just asking you to use your common sense. I want you to think like a police officer thinks. Do you believe that as a police officer, sheriff's department, do you believe that you would pay the money to have all these cops out there searching? You've got the drones in the air and you've brought your dog handler in, but you didn't make a 45-mile drive to go into a jail where you would have been given absolute access to Seth to say, hey, we're looking for your child. Did he call you? Is he at your house? Nobody, Nobody from Sumner County, they get the dogs out, they get the drones, they line the streets up with police cars, but nobody drove over to Seth's house and broke the door in? Who believes this story? It's just remarkable. And I don't know how Seth manages his frustration. Yeah. And Sebastian didn't leave any evidence. Yes. How absurd. Who said that should be a t-shirt? Sebastian left no evidence. And on the back, I want the quote from Christopher Proudfoot. I can't imagine what Riley Strain's parents are going through. Because those two comments right there should make any investigator really uncomfortable. But again, this video is not about Christopher Proudfoot or Katie Proudfoot or even Seth Rogers. This video is about what happened the morning that it was discovered that Sebastian was not where he was supposed to be. He should have been in his bed, warm and protected, and he wasn't. What did the cops do? That's the point of this video. Who believes that the cops would bring out all of the police officers, sheriff's deputies, and the drones, and the dogs, but not a single one of them would get in a police cruiser and head over to Davidson County to say, hey, Seth, have you heard from your son? Because they had over an hour and a half to do that. Do you believe they're going to waste all that money on that search before asking the father if he had heard from his son? Think about it.
I pulled in, I took a moment to look and see who all was there. That's how I know, and then I proceeded to watch what they were doing for about 5 or 10 minutes. Was watching the sheriffs and everybody go in and out of the house. It kind of surprised me that they didn't have the house on lockdown. Child's missing. You would think that they would have cordoned off the area, not have people walking through the yard.
Absolutely correct. Yes, Seth. You're exactly right. There should be a law called Sebastian's Law that says that if you have a kid or a teenager, special needs, on the spectrum, whatever, that if they are special needs, that if they go missing, if they are a quotation marks runaway, that the law enforcement should be required to treat the environment as a potential crime scene, that they should preserve evidence until they do actually know whether this kid actually did wander off or there's been a problem. Because we know kids that have special needs, kids that are on the spectrum, they are more likely to suffer domestic violence than neurotypical kids. The crime, the home, because of the story, because the set of circumstances that Christopher Proudfoot laid out, the home should have been preserved. if Christopher Proudfoot says he walks out the front door, he takes time to lock the door, and then he walks out into the night, not a single police officer should be walking across that yard. Why? Because you're disturbing the scent that would have been left by Sebastian. Not only did they have many police officers walking all around the property and the neighborhood, they had friends and family that were coming in and out of the house. This is the most disgusting police behavior. I didn't really look at it as blatantly incompetent until I found out that when they went over to Seth's house, they treated that home like there had been a crime committed. And at that point, I said, this is complete bullshit. There is simply no explanation, no excuse whatsoever that the sheriff's deputy, the investigators can say, well, when we were with the Proudfoots, we thought it was a runaway. But then when we were with Seth, we decided that there was a potential crime. You can't do that. Isn't Lady Justice blind? Doesn't she have a blindfold? Sumner County Sheriff's Department, the local police, they have failed Sebastian Rogers. And I think, it's my opinion, it's maybe not even my opinion, it's a fear that I have, it's a thought. Did they fail Sebastian because they're friends with Christopher Proudfoot? Did they fail Sebastian because they know that the Bowersox are friends with the judge and attorneys? Is that what's happening here? The Bowersox sold the right house to the right person? Is this some good old boy bullshit happening?
Walking everywhere, destroying any type of evidence or covering up any type of smell or anything else. I mean, we got drones and we got dogs, but you also got officers just walking everywhere willy-nilly, not paying attention. I saw some of them that were going around the windows on the outside. There was some in the back of the house where the backyard, walking around the fenced-in area.
Were you able to walk right into the home?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Nobody questioned you?
No.
Incredible.
Nobody asked who you were?
No.
You walked past police officers?
Yes.
Oh,
okay. Wow. So when you walk in, you said you left work at what time?
7:22.
So about an hour. So let's just say you arrive at 8:30 or so, correct?
Yeah.
Who's there that you recognize outside of law enforcement?
Sarah, Katie was there. Katie was there. Trying to remember. It's just, as soon as I walked in, like I remember walking up to the stairs, nobody saying anything. I opened the door, I walked in. The first thing I looked down at the left, and there was Sebastian's shoes. There was his old pair of tennis shoes, his new pair of tennis shoes that he just got, and the boots that I had just bought him. And it's like, well, all of his shoes are here.
There you go. There you go. Okay. So not only does the kid who is not he doesn't elope, he doesn't run, he never goes outside per Christopher Proudfoot, this child in the middle of the night, being on the spectrum, being a creature of habit and routine, he completely breaks the routine, totally and completely blows up his daily routine. He's had a long, overly stimulating day. He's back at home in this safe, the safest environment he knows, which is his bedroom with his things. And they're asking me and you, people that are experts in autism, they're asking us to believe that this child will now get up, leave the protected environment that he's so damn grateful to be back in after this really crazy day, right? And not only does he leave out the front door, is conscientious enough to turn around and relock the door to keep mommy and the puppy safe. He then walks out into the dark with no shoes on. What? Sensory integration problems right there that are so common in autism. This kid's not going to walk off with no shoes on. He's just not going to do it. He's not going to do it. He's also not going to walk out into the night unless he has been taught to walk out into the night. He's not going to leave the safe room that he was longing for all day long while Katie was dragging him around from one stimulating activity to the next. This is a complete fiction. And where are the investigators? If Seth Rogers walks in and he goes, okay, why isn't the house being controlled? Where's the police tape? They got the dogs out. Why are they letting people walk around? What's happening here? No, nobody's posted at the door. He walks right in. Nobody questions him. And his eyes, the eyes of a father, land on the shoes. And he goes, well, here's all of his shoes. Here's his old shoes. Here's his new tennis shoes. And here's his new boots. So what the hell did he wear on his feet? And I believe that was a mistake on Katie's part. I think they messed up because her explanation for the shoes never, ever made sense. Well, we were in the process of replacing them. He had outgrown them, and we were in the process of replacing them. Bullshit. Stop it. What? You really want us to believe that you let your kid outgrow every single pair of shoes that he owned, and it didn't occur to you, I better go buy him more? Okay, Katie, what the hell was he wearing to school every day? And yet, this video is not about Katie or Chris or Seth. This video is about the investigators that responded that morning. What are you telling me, Sumner County? You're telling me you don't have a single real police officer, either sheriff's department or city police. You don't have a single honest, real police officer or deputy who can look at the shoes, hear the story, notice the timeline for contacting the father, and say, I don't know. I don't think this story makes sense. Not a single one of you. Or is this all about money? Is this all about elections and campaigns and Bauer Sox donations to your re-election committee?
You're just, and I walk in and Katie's right there in my face. Like as soon as you walk in to the hallway, because you walk through the door, and then there's the dining room table is here, and then there's the carpet in the living room, and there's like a divider wall right here, corner. And I walked around, and she was shoving her phone in my face, showing me the picture that is on the Amber Alert. And she was like, "Look, he was having a good day." And it's like, it was a picture taken on Saturday, I find out later. I mean, at that point in time, I was just like, why are you shoving a picture of my son in my face?
That is a very good question, Seth. Why would she even be interested in whether he had had a good day or not? Like, why would that even be in her mind? She doesn't know where her child is. The DNA in your body should be screaming, find my kid, period. You're not going to be taking an accounting of whether he had fun at the pizza parlor or the bowling alley or the skating rink. Those things are inconsequential when the life of your child is at risk. They mean nothing. Nothing. So it is very curious, Sumner County. It is very curious that the first words out of Christopher Proudfoot's mouth as he is speaking to the father of this child, don't be mad. It is incredibly interesting, Sumner County, that the minute that Seth walks into this house and he takes note, there are Sebastian's shoes. He did not walk out of this house. There's his shoes right there, all of them. The old one, the new tennis shoes, and the new boots, they're all right there. He didn't walk out of this house. But even more interesting is Katie coming up with a picture of Sebastian on her phone as if to prove to Seth, there's not a problem here. We don't need to worry about a problem here. Don't be mad, Seth. It's no problem. Don't be mad, Seth. Sebastian had fun at the skating rink. Don't be mad, Seth. He was given gallons of sugar. Don't be mad, Seth. Where are the damn police? Where are they as this is all unfolding? I'm telling you, somebody needs to get an attorney and sue the pants off of these investigators.
I know what my son looks like, and the picture doesn't say shit.
It was just a photo. No, nothing, no border, no.
Just like wanting to shove it in my face, and like, he was having a good day. Well, the picture shows that he was smiling, so yeah, he was happy at that moment. I didn't understand the point of it.
Was she being questioned by law enforcement at the time, or were they just, because from what I understand about, if law enforcement believes that a child is a runaway, specifically an autistic child, a lot of the times they want the mother or father, somebody that's recognizable to the child, their voice out there asking for them.
Absolutely.
I find it odd that they weren't doing that.
Me too.
Because if Sebastian was running away and you would have this mob of people looking for him, it would possibly scare him. And
so this is a really interesting point. Now, he is exactly correct about this, that the cops want you, the trusted face, the soothing voice, They want you out there. They want your face out there. They want your voice out there on the radio, on the news, as much as possible. For a couple different reasons. One, if the child is a runaway, the hope is that it's sort of like a siren call of safety. You see mom or dad, you hear their voice, and then all you could think of is, no, I made a mistake. I really do want to go home, right? Or if someone has kidnapped you, then you have to make that kidnap victim, you have to make them a human being. You have to appeal to the kidnapper that the person that they've kidnapped is not a commodity, that it's not an object, that the creature, the person that they have kidnapped, that is someone that is loving and kind, just like the people in the kidnapper's family. You want to humanize that kidnapping victim so that hopefully you prompt the kidnapper to see that child and have empathy for the child, to see the child as a living, thinking creature, not an object or a means to an end, like a way to get money. So this is just sort of basic, right? This is well known in forensic psychology. This is nothing curious or unusual. And Josh is 100% right about getting the face and the voice out of a trusted person, again, to signal to that child, there's a safe place for you. You're wanted, you're loved. Even if you ran away, nobody cares. All we want is for you to be back home in your room where you're nice and safe and sound. And yet, Sumner County didn't do that. In fact, according to Christopher Proudfoot and Seth, they were told they did not want them on any interviews, not to do interviews, not to put their face out there. Again, this video is not about Christopher Proudfoot, Katie Proudfoot, and Seth Rogers. This video is about law enforcement that would tell the family of a kidnapping victim not to go on the air and humanize that child. What the hell?
So was she preoccupied with something else, or was she sitting there, or was she talking to law enforcement?
There was a lot of detectives already in the house. A lot of them, well, one of them was sitting at the dining room table. There was 2 or 3 of them in his room, and there was a couple of them in the living room. Katie was showing that stuff to me in my face, and I was just trying to figure out why she was doing that. And that's when I was like, why is his shoes over here? If he ran away, wouldn't he have shoes on? And I mean, it was just.
And what was her response to that?
She didn't respond to that at all. Neither did law enforcement.
So
Wow.
when you
Wow.
saw Katie, I'm assuming that Chris was there, correct?
No.
Okay, he hadn't made it there yet. Was Kathy there?
Kathy was there.
I want to say yes, she was.
Okay.
Boy, Kathy Bowersox has got
Anybody else that was family of theirs or extended family?
No.
Okay. So I know you talked about what Katie did, but was she a typical panicking mother? Was she losing her mind? I mean, what was her state of mind?
I didn't notice anything really about her state of mind. At the very beginning, I was trying to figure out what was going on in this house
Yes.
for my son not to be there. So You know,
Was she
the
screaming?
next
Was she crying? Anything like that?
do what?
Was she screaming or crying or?
No. The
And
next thing that I remember about her, because I went into Sebastian's room and to see what was, see what the room looked like. And I remember going into his room. His switch was plugged in on the floor. His bedspread in his bed was not made. And there were some clothes on the floor. And that was about it.
So you were able to walk into Sebastian's room.
okay, now I want to remember that Josh said that. Okay. So he says this is the morning Sebastian has gone missing, right? Tons of cops everywhere, dogs, drones, the whole 9 yards. And Katie, the mother's not crying. And in the interviews later, in the weeks after, Katie's not crying. Now, I'm not a big crier myself, but if my child goes missing, I think I'm going to have to be medicated. You know what I mean? I think the potential for panic would be like the complete highest level imaginable. And yet, she's not crying. Her child is gone. She doesn't. Why?
And there were some clothes on the floor. And that was about it.
So you were able to walk into Sebastian's room.
Yeah.
Crazy. That's
I mean,
crazy.
nothing about this showed any type of procedurals being done at all. I mean, it was just pretty much open. People were just walking around. They weren't. There was no scene to be. What's the word I'm looking for? It was chaos in that house.
And it shouldn't
Cops
be
didn't give.
anybody.
Cops weren't acting like anything. And Katie kept saying that he ran away, and it's like,
So Josh, you do a lot of work with Chris McDonough from multiple things, but from the Cold Case Foundation, most famously. So they're not looking at that. You tell me this. This is more of a question. They're not looking at that as necessarily as a crime scene in that situation, but one thing that we do know is that it is a scene. Correct?
Yeah. So basically, it sounds like what they showed up to was that they're under the assumption that he's an autistic child who has ran away. Happens a lot, and typically children are found pretty fast. That do run away.
And that brings me to the last point. Yes, you can say that the cops are saying, okay, well, he's on the spectrum and some of these kids will elope. However, even that is a pattern of behavior, right? If you have a kid who's on the spectrum and they elope, it's a common occurrence. They do it often, right? Or you have to take steps to keep them safe. They'll even leave school. They'll run from school. And so schools have to, where you have a child who is an eloper, you have to have special safeguards in place to stop them from getting away. Because if they get out and they're running down the road and they get run over, guess whose responsibility it is? So one of the things about people that are on the spectrum is you can really predict their behavior. They're creatures of habit. They live a rules-based life, and all you got to do is figure out what the rule is that they have made for themselves, and then that will tell you what they're going to do. But we've been told time and time and time again, Sebastian is not an eloper. In fact, he's the exact opposite of an eloper. He never leaves. He never goes outside. He loves his room. So what the hell would cause this child to get up in the middle of the night after having had an exhausting and overwhelming day? What would cause him to walk out, lock the door? His level of conscientiousness was so great that he knew to lock the door, but he did not know to put his shoes on? That's not how conscientiousness works. And so, again, with the police, you have to stop and ask yourself, okay, let's say we do decide to be like the Sumner County deputies. Oh, well, if Katie Proudfoot says it, then we have to believe it because she's the mommy after all. And parents don't hurt their children, do they, Christopher Watts? So they said, well, we're just going to believe her that he's a runaway, even though he didn't have shoes on, all these things, right? Okay, geniuses. Where'd he go? You've made all kinds of excuses. Maybe he got lost. Maybe he fell in the pond. But where is he? You brought out your dogs. You didn't secure the crime scene, so your dogs are basically useless. You've got your drone up. You're using your thermal camera to see if you can find him. He's nowhere to be found. So what do you think happened to him? You have questioned, you should have questioned. It'll be interesting to find out if you did, in fact. You should have questioned all of the registered sex offenders. You should have determined their whereabouts that night between 12 midnight and 6 a.m. Did you? My guess is going to be no. And then you did the unthinkable, Sumner County. You did the unthinkable. You allowed Christopher Proudfoot to get in his truck and drive away and stay gone for hours. Why? Why did Seth have to stay away from the Proudfoot home that night? Why? Why would you let Christopher Proudfoot drive away and be gone for hours and hours? This is some serious, terrible missteps. And I get it. People are going to be upset with me. You have no right to question the cops. I know, I've heard it before. But how do you account for this? How do you account for all the shoes are right there by the door? And yet, not a single one of the deputies goes, I kind of got a bad feeling about this, people. Maybe we better do a crime scene here. How do you have a runaway when all of his shoes are here? Like, what's that about? Nobody, not a single investigator, not a single police officer, no one stopped to say, you know what? This story is nonsense. Not a one of you. You went to the Proudfoot home and trampled and traipsed all over anything. You did not use luminol. You did not take photographs of the house. You did not check the hands and arms and torso of Katie and Christopher Proudfoot. You didn't do any of those things, but then you drove over to Seth Rogers' house where you proceeded to rip Sebastian's bedroom to pieces as if it were a crime scene. Someone should be held accountable for this. there is something rotting in Sumner County. Hold on just 1 minute. Got one more thing to share. This is the Tennessee government TBI missing children page. And they do keep it updated. So when somebody's found, they'll take them down. We have today, we have Sebastian Rogers, who went missing February the 26th, 2024, about 9-10 months ago. We have Holland Snap, who went missing from Kingsport, Tennessee. Yes, Kingsport. That sounds familiar, doesn't it? October 15th, 2023. Layla Santinello, June 26th, 2023, from Kingsport. We have Kennedy, a 2-day-old baby, went missing February 2nd, 2022. 22222. That catches my attention because of the occult implications. You have Summer Wells. She went missing from Rogersville, June 15th, 2021. Eva Alejandra Lopez went missing September 22nd, 2015, Winchester, Tennessee. Chloe Leverett, September 28th, 2012, Unionville. Gage Daniel, September 28th, 2012, Unionville. Zaylee Grace Fryer, May the 10th, 2011, a 4-month-old baby. The lack of interest in the investigation for Summer Wells equals the lack of interest for Layla Santinello's investigation, Holleen Snap, as well as Sebastian Rogers. These 4 kids, 15, 19, 20, and then 5, all from an area similar. And the law enforcement just seemed to have a lack of interest. They didn't communicate with the parents about the investigation. The questions, the steps they took seemed to demonstrate low interest in the investigation. And I think that's notable that all these cases happen in Tennessee. You look at other states that have these missing kids, it doesn't really look like this. It's really, really disturbing. And you don't know. I'm not suggesting, don't get me wrong, because I'm sure there'll be someone who says this. It's not that I feel that that law enforcement had any culpability in what happened to Sebastian. I don't think they were a part of it at all. That is not at all the issue. My problem is I got a feeling that this is sort of a good old boy problem. Do y'all know what I mean by a good old boy problem? That song, That's the Night That the Lights Went Out in Georgia, right? That's the night that they hung an innocent man. Don't trust your soul to no backwoods Southern lawyer because the judge in the town has bloodstains on his hand. That good old boy network, like we saw with the Murdoch case too, that if you come from the right family, if you have money, if you make political donations to the right people, then if you do something that might get you in trouble, maybe the good old boy system allows people to look the other direction. Not that they caused the crime, but perhaps somehow maybe they help their friends, maybe look the other way a little too much, failed to account for how a runaway would leave the home without his shoes. It's the same kind of thing, except it's the Dixie Mafia. We always called it the good old boy system. And it's a real thing. It's not, if you come from a small town, it makes it easier to see the system, the good old boy game. I happen to believe that the good old boy system is alive and well in the big cities as well. I mean, if you look at Houston, Dallas, there's a lot of that internal kind of nepotism or making things disappear for your friends. That's all happening. I just think that in the small towns, it's easier to discern. It's easier to see the pattern, right? If you're a kid who comes from the banker's family and you get caught drunk driving, the cop's going to load you in the car and drive you home to your mom and dad's house. They're not going to arrest you. But if you are not the banker's kid, your mom's on welfare, unemployed, then you're going to get arrested. You're going to be given a hefty ticket, hefty fine, probably lose your driver's license. And, your mom is going to have to, who's on welfare, is going to have to try to shoulder that financial burden. And the only difference between those two kids is who's your daddy. And that is absolutely unacceptable. And in this case, Sebastian Rogers going missing, it is really, really confusing how illogical the behavior of Christopher Proudfoot, the behavior of Katie Proudfoot, but even more important, which was the point of this video, how detached and clueless law enforcement seems to be when it comes to Sebastian. That they seem oblivious to the reality that something bad happened to Sebastian. The story that we've been given by his mother, it's illogical. It doesn't make sense. We don't know what did happen, but this idea that he would walk out of the house in the middle of the night with no shoes on, but turn around and lock the door, I don't think so. That's not likely. And my point is, why don't the cops seem interested in that? Here's another important point. When they're at the Proudfoot's house, Sebastian's a simple runaway. But when they go to Seth Rogers' house, there's a crime, a potential criminal to be unveiled. Dirty South, people. The good old boy system. That if you have money, if you have the right friends, if someone knows who your daddy is, you're probably going to get a ride home in the back seat of the cop car. But if you're not a part of that good old boy system, if you don't have connections, what will they do? They will demonize you. They may even try to set you up for something that you didn't do. In one of the interviews, that is weird to me, as Chris said, I said, here we go, yet they said he isn't a runner. Did he say, I said, here we go again? I thought he said, here we go. Because for me, Peachy, love your name. When I heard him say, here we go, I felt like that was sort of like they were planning for it. And now here we are in our script. This is what we've been planning for. But I'll have to go back and find that, Peachy, and re-listen to it. You may be right. He may have said, "Here we go again." In that case, then maybe it does stand up that, Sebastian was an eloper. But if that's the case, Peachy, if he was in the habit of running, then I would say, okay, well, so why go through so much trouble to tell us that he did not run, that he was not a runner? I don't know the answer to that. My relative should have been charged with a felony carrying 18 years in prison, but it didn't happen because of who my grandpa was. It happens to this day. Blonde PT, don't let anyone ever tell you the good old boy system is not alive and well in the Deep South. It is absolutely there. If your grandpa was friends with somebody else's grandpa, you're golden. If you got a certain amount of money or land, you're great. If you were a really good athlete, then all the people that were on your football team with you, they'll help you out in a pinch. Keep your kid out of jail. It's a real thing, y'all. It's a real thing. All right. Woo, this has been a long one, hasn't it? Hi, AK-47. You know what doesn't make any sense? Like he barely sleeps, some crazy theory that aliens just poof. I think somehow, some way, he was led away from his home. That is my theory. Well, and AK-47, there is the cell phone video that they told us. Christopher Proudfoot said, no, we had great hopes that was, but it was just the garbage truck. Oh, okay, Christopher Proudfoot. The garbage trucks run at 3 a.m. Try really hard. I know you remember and think that you're so smart. Try to envision a world, Christopher Proudfoot, where you are not the smartest person. Ugh, God, he just gets under my skin. If he was not a runner, why did they say he goes to the school too? Well, that was his school that he went to. You're talking about where she drove up there looking? Thank you, DB. It's so good to see you. Garbage trucks don't run through people's backyards. Thank you, his eyes. You are exactly right. No, once the technical people got involved and really laid out that video, it's so easy to see, right? And again, the question's, where's the cops? Just like in Summerwell's case, where are the cops? Where are the cops? What happened with Summerwell's? Okay, I'm not even going to go on to that case. I'm just going to stop. They told Seth the same thing. It was a garbage truck. Isn't that crazy, Jimmy? It's just so hard to understand why your law enforcement would do this. But is it really? Because if you stop to think about elections and you think about campaigns, and if you are a local politician, sheriff's department, there are only a handful of big money people that live in small towns. And if you start messing around arresting their son or their daughter-in-law, you're probably not going to get your donation. It's really, I never, let me be clear about this. Let me make this crystal clear, like Christopher Proudfoot. Speak, Krista. I'll make this real easy for you. Doesn't it seem that, how do I want to say this? That this video was done in a way, I hope my goal was that this video was done in a way that the focus would not be to look at, did Seth hurt Sebastian? Did Christopher hurt Sebastian? Did Katie hurt Sebastian? Not at all. I'm hoping that it was done in a way that shines the light on the sheriff's department, the local police, that they don't seem to have any interest in investigating what happened to this kid, and that they did not have interest from the very beginning. Not only did they show low interest, they also showed a dichotomy. There was a definite division, opposing factors. At the Proudfoot home, he's a runaway. At the Rogers home, there's a crime. Sebastian is the victim of a crime. How does a sheriff's department, how did they explain that to their people? That was the goal of this video. And it's not the same as saying cops are dirty, cops are bad, cops are, awful. I don't believe that. I'm a hold the blue line kind of girl, 100%. But this, how is it possible to look at the facts of this case and say, yes, I think law enforcement acted in a logical, reasonable manner during this investigation, and it's too bad that they didn't find Sebastian? How can you say that anything that they did was rational or reasonable? You don't do anything at the Proudfoot house, which is actually the last location for Sebastian. But then you go over to Seth's house and tear things apart and go through everything with a fine-tooth comb, like someone did something wrong over there. How do you explain yourself? It's like this: the assassination attempt against Donald Trump. Who here thinks that the Secret Service did their job that day? Or does it seem like someone dropped the ball in a big way, and when the mistakes that they made allowed a crazy gunman to get with a couple of 100 yards of the top presidential candidate? That wasn't an accidental thing. It's incredible. So I'm not hating cops. I'm not going after cops in general. I'm talking about this one specific case, and it does have parallels to Summer Wells, the lack of disinterest in the investigation. But in the case of Sebastian Rogers, it wasn't just disinterest. There were also illogical, irrational behavior. That you don't do anything at the Proudfoot home, but you turn around and conduct a full-blown investigation at the Seth Rogers home. That you take, even though Sebastian was not at Seth's house, you take all of the electronics that you can get your hands on, every single piece of electronic that's at that house. But all you do is take the phones of Katie and Christopher, the phones that they volunteer. You leave video game systems, you leave computers, you leave all kinds of electronics just because he's a runaway. There's not a crime. But it was a crime at Seth's house? How can that be? Am I missing out? I don't understand what you're saying. Nobody hates you, AK-47. Complacency with good old boy system, bad police work. it's, I really think it's a factor of who you know, and that is wrong for Sebastian. Sebastian matters. He deserves to have justice. And for goodness sake, if he is safe and he is living with someone up in the hills, doesn't he deserve to come home? Doesn't he deserve to be with his dad who will love him and protect him? It's really sad. I hope that there is FBI investigation into this. I hope that the state of Tennessee is on alert and that they are investigating Sumner County. And if they haven't so far, they surely need to, in my opinion only. All right. I hope you guys have a great evening. It is almost 11 o'clock. We have been having this discussion for 2.5 hours. You guys are amazing. Thank you so much for being here. Please, please, please hit the subscribe button, hit the thumbs up, leave a comment under the video, and I'll be back. All right. You guys have a good evening. Talk to you later. Oh, wait. I got to give you the link. You need the link to the conversation. This is Seth Rogers' channel. That link is so that you can go to the channel and watch all. Oh, wait, I think that's the wrong one. Hold on. Copy. So you can go to Seth's channel and watch the whole interview. It is shocking, absolutely shocking. And then the next video that I want to give you the link to is this one right here. And this one, copy, is to Duchess's interview with Katie and Christopher Proudfoot. With those two, if you listen carefully, they're both long, but if you listen carefully, take notes, pay attention to what Christopher and Katie say happened the morning that Sebastian went missing, and compare that to what Seth tells us happened. You will really question the mentality of the cops when you hear the differences in the two accounts. All right. This matters. This is important. And I am aware that Christopher Proudfoot is a litigious asshole and that their behavior has really shut down conversation about Sebastian Rogers and the fact that he is missing, and that the police seem to have had blind eyes when it came to this investigation. And someone's got to talk about this case. That is the truth. Sebastian deserves to be found and to have his story told one way or the other. All right. All right. I hope you'll go listen to Seth Rogers' channel, the live that they did yesterday. You just will not believe it. The facts that are just unbelievable. It's just unbelievable. All right. Logic is not working in Sebastian's case, Blonde PT. Completely agree. It's so disturbing. It is so disturbing. Good to see you, AK-47. You are not hated. Everything's fine. Candy for you. Thank you so much. Love you too. I appreciate you. Cinnamon, hot. Good to see you, my friend. And Fractured Fairy Tales. Wonderful to see you. And I cannot go past 2 hours of everybody. So please know, Ginger Girl, June, Justice Jane, good to see you. Thank you for the details on Sebastian. Candy for you, His Eyes, good to see you. Radmila, welcome. Lisa Hogan, thank you for being here. DB, love ya. We have so many people here. I'll never be able to get to everybody. Peachy, good to see you. All right, y'all. Have have a little bit of graciousness toward me. It's very late and I'm an old lady. Hey, don't dive. Danny G, good to see you. And let's get this conversation going again. In my opinion, Sebastian has a right to be found and to let his story be known. And Seth's a good dad, and laced with Lacey, Seth deserves to know what happened to his baby. He really does. He deserves to know. So let's talk about this. We can't let this go. This is not the right thing to do. Hit the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, share on your social media, and I will be back. See you later. Have a good night.